Now, it's been described as one of the UK's biggest environmental scandals. And more than 40 years on, families are still campaigning for a full public inquiry into what happened in the Northamptonshire town of Corby.
Back in 1980, the town's steelworks were shut down and 200 million tonnes of toxic waste were transported through the area, often in open lorries.
Well, last year, the Netflix drama Toxic Town showed the struggles of parents whose children have been born with defects. Tim Moffat reports.
So it's amazing to think what it gave the town and what it's taken away.
It's heartbreaking.
For more than 30 years, Tracy and Lisa's lives have been dominated by what happened here.
Back in the day, that was the steelworks.
We live with the pain every day.
In its heyday, Corby Steelworks was the biggest in Europe. Following its closure in 1980, a huge dismantling operation got underway, which sent polluting clouds into the atmosphere.
There's a lot of emotions there. You know, it's heartbreak.
A number of babies in the area were born with abnormalities.
My daughter was born in 1989. She was born with limb differences in both her hands.
My daughter, Shelby Ann Taylor, was born in April 1996. Sadly, sort of 24 hours later, we were told that all her internal organs were deformed. She only had a 2-chamber heart, livers, kidneys. They weren't formed properly, and sadly, we lost her at 4 days old.
In 2009, the High Court agreed with claims that Corby Borough Council had been negligent with the clean-up of the steelworks, and that there could be a link with birth defects in the area. It was a landmark case.
We will build a town for the people of Corby on the back of a rapid reclamation of the steelworks.
Sometimes children are just born different.
Wasn't his fault.
Toxic Town, released almost a year ago on Netflix, told the story to a global audience.
I'm looking around this room and I see mother after mother.
Mrs. McIntyre, I understand.
So what impact has it had, do you think?
Big impact. Back in the day at the court case, there wasn't the media or social media coverage. So a lot of people didn't know about it, even though they were living in Corby.
It's real life, it's real people in the parks, real people's pain. And it just, yeah, brought it out.
And Tracy, you were portrayed by Amy Lou Wood.
I thought it was something wrong with me.
That is what mothers
What was
do.
that like, seeing your life played out on screen?
Strange seeing somebody else play your life, but the way they told it and the way she acted it out, we couldn't be more grateful.
Luckily, when he come out of treatment, we were lucky to have another, well, boy added to our family, didn't we?
Amongst those watching, Alison and Andy, who also live in Corby.
Never found anger through any of this. Just hurt.
Their son, Fraser, was diagnosed with leukemia when he was 17 months old.
Our consultant just said, we're dealing with something we've never dealt before. We've done testing and it's showing a really rare form of this cancer with gene rearrangements.
And to hear your consultant say that about your son, you just break.
Fraser is now 9, but he very nearly died, and his cancer has left a permanent legacy.
His life expectancy is shortened because he's had transplant and he's at high risk of a secondary cancer.
The amount of people we know personally that have kids with cancer, this is not normal.
After Toxic Town, we decided perhaps it's the right time now to reach out to families to see if they're thinking the same as us.
The 2009 High Court case focused on limb deformities in babies potentially caused by hazardous airborne dust. Alison, Andy and other families' concerns are focused on where the waste was buried and whether there is a link to childhood cancer.
When your child is diagnosed with cancer, you are given a booklet and it says possible causes, and the top possible cause is environmental factors.
The only place where toxic waste from the dismantled Corby Steelworks was officially buried is Dean Quarry, on the outskirts of the town. It's monitored by the Environment Agency. But the BBC has seen documents that suggest waste was also taken elsewhere in Corby and to Kettering, 8 miles away.
We don't think it's the dust from the lorries at all, because this is spreading out wider now. And that's when we thought about contaminated land. And it just makes you think, where did all of that toxic waste go?
Corby Borough Council was abolished in 2021 and replaced by North Northamptonshire Council. Last month, it published 2 sets of findings into childhood cancer rates following requests by families. They found that childhood cancer rates in Corby were no higher than elsewhere in England. The council said, "We approached this analysis with seriousness and sensitivity, ensuring the most robust methods were used and that the work was independently reviewed." The findings provide reassurance that childhood cancer rates in Corby are not higher than expected. Families have asked to see the raw data used to come to this conclusion, but the council has not released it, citing strict and important data protection rules. Lawyer Des Collins represented families at the High Court in 2009. In Toxic Town, he was played by Rory Kinnear.
Justice has to be possible, and I am far from done.
The only way to address it, in my view, is for there to be a full statutory public inquiry to determine precisely what happened to this waste, where it is, whether it can be located at the moment, whether it should be dug up at the moment, and finally, is it causing any health problems?
Public inquiries can only be initiated by the government. In a statement, North Northamptonshire Council said, "Our records, originally held by Corby Borough Council, do not show the movement of waste to sites other than Dean Quarry. We were made aware of a document last week that indicates some waste may have been moved to another location, and we are currently considering that information." At this point in time, this council does not consider the threshold has been met to call upon government for a public inquiry.
Because they don't have a choice.
Toxic Town shone a global spotlight on Corby.
I'm here for them and the damage my council did them.
It's also prompted new questions about events that took place more than 40 years ago. Tim Muffet, BBC News.
Well, we're joined now by George Taylor, who was born in Corby with a limb defect and is the narrator as well of the BBC podcast, The Toxic Waste Scandal. Morning to you, George.
Morning.
Do you want to just explain to people at home how this has affected your whole life?
Yeah, so I mean, I was born with a hand defect in my right hand and right forearm, where I had all 5 fingers, but index finger and thumb weren't able to bend unless in weird ways. Through that, sort of hurting my hand, a lot of pain, a lot of, pain so bad that you'd be sick. So I grew tumours then on my hand as a response to that, they think, and had to have a series of major surgeries between the ages of 10 and 14 to reconstruct my hand into some sort of workable system, basically. And then obviously I left Corby when I was only a few months old, up into Aberdeen. And luckily, then my mum's friend saw a small article in the paper with one of the first sort of journalistic bits about the cluster that was starting to be discovered. And, from then on, from the age of 5 until I was 18, it was the court case. It was sort of trying to find out why and what had happened.
So do you remember a moment maybe back in your childhood where someone explained to you, or the penny dropped, or there was a moment where you thought, gosh, this might be what's happened? Yeah,
so I think, my mum and dad would probably say I was a very annoying kid, but I remember sort of sneaking down as a child and sort of stealing the letters from Des and the solicitors and having to read through those just to sort of try and get an idea, not understanding 90% of what I read. But then it was, Des came up to Aberdeen and sort of spoke to us, and that's where it sort of started to snowball.
Because you wanted to know, you wanted to understand.
Yeah, I wouldn't say me, I would say the mums. The mums were the real sort of force. You've seen sort of Tracy, especially there, my mum, other mums, all sort of banding together and really fighting, and they were sort of the force that drove it.
And what needs to happen now?
I think the big thing is a public inquiry is the most important thing. It's quite astonishing that it never happened back then after the case, because you'd think, it's not the only steelworks in the UK. There's many more steelworks, many more heavy industry sites. Why they wouldn't want to try and learn lessons from that and try and get answers.
And in your work with the podcast, are you finding out about other things that?
Yeah, I found out a lot. I was a kid growing up. I was detached from it up in Aberdeen. I didn't really know about the nonsense, people in Corby being sort of targeted by other people in Corby because they were part of the case, maybe, getting weird eyes at work or, comments in school and things like this.
The council have said that they don't think at the moment that the threshold has been met for a public inquiry, but it's not the council that does it in the end. It would be a government minister who calls it, doesn't it? Do you get the impression that there is movement there, that there is sympathy at the levels in Westminster?
I do. I think we've got two local MPs, in Lee Barron and Rosie Wrighting, who are really sort of leading the push on that side of things, and hopefully they can sort of drive that with the help of hopefully more MPs as more information comes out. The council came out and they say the threshold's not being met. They did a study looking at the childhood cancer rates, and they only looked at the last 10 years. The steelworks the demolishing started in the mid-80s.
So that's why in our notes it says that they say that childhood cancer rates aren't higher than average, but you would say they weren't looking at the right...
Yeah, I mean, they've only looked at the last 10 years.
Yeah.
The clean-up and the sort of reconstruction of the land started in the mid-80s. Why wouldn't you start the process then? Why are you looking at some random point, 30 years down the line?
And that's what you want a public inquiry to do. George,
massively, yeah.
Thank you so much for coming in and talking to us. George's podcast, it's on BBC Sounds. It's called The Toxic Waste Scandal. Well worth a listen.